Balls. Welcome back, guys. We're going to read more Monero and listen to my cat in the background. She retarded. Hmm. Oh, are you making a Monero wallet? No. But I'm reading all the Monero drama. I would never take that. I would never take on that type of work. I think there's slightly enough Monero wallets. Later, Billy. And I mean, the ultimate Monero wallet is just a paper wallet. It can be completely done offline in an air-gapped system. It's probably the best option. Mm-hmm. Lots of drama in the Monero community. Why the hell are my headphones auto-muted, but also? Alright, later again because I thought your mic wasn't on. Holy shit, my audio wasn't. That's funny. Lots of drama in the Monero community. Before we continue this glorious perspective, always remember to be skeptical. And being skeptical of even your own currency and people's decision making on whether they want to implement Monero or not. I think one of the biggest issues is Monero in itself needs to have a purpose, and a company needs a purpose in order to use it. I think platforms such as Kick and Odyssey could have definitely went the Monero route in terms of payment or doing donos or whatever. But Simple X recently says they are going to do. Where is it? Where is Simple X? Everyone's crashing out because they want to implement their own way of payment system. Community feedback to this plan is to particularly polarized and helpful. What most people who criticize our plans to adopt ZK-EVM blockchain don't understand is what we are not choosing ETH as a cryptocurrency, and we don't want to depend on any cryptocurrency. They kind of like point this out. The Ethereum ZK-EVM is a massively decentralized computational network, allowing to achieve network-wide consensus, is more trustworthy than any alternatives publicly for names and server registries, and privately with the native ZK proofs for infrastructure and payment. What is important is that we view Ethereum network is supported by the regulators. Several SEC decisions show that they see Ethereum as a worldwide computer, with ETH being a utility token and not as an investment. So please be patient and try to understand. It's not the choice between ETH, XMR, etc. It's the choice between extreme decentralization, the ZK ETH. Pretty much it's called the Ethereum Virtual Machine Computational Network, can support a more centralized models such as network-wide authority, e.g. Tor Session Foundation. We always build what's best for the user, even though it may be hard to explain. Read more about our Simple X token and stay tuned. We are interested in the open standard-based messaging wallet integration that can be developed in collaboration with some wallet. Not interested in embedding the wallet directly into the app. It's the same position as for Tor. Happy to integrate via open protocol. Won't embed. Did you not pay attention to the Proton Mail debacle? This just exposed you and made you look terrible. Which of the debacle you mean? Using pulse chain for it might be viable consideration. The trade-off between adoption stability ability of funding. Speed is not critical for what we need to do. Most Ethereum layer 2s are fast enough. Interesting. I get where people are being hyperbolic about this. Anyone that's well integrated can see that this is nothing wrong with what you're doing. Oh, that's well intentioned. Some people are like crashing out over it. I think Simple X is making a good decision, even as a Monero maxi and enjoyer. They have a good explanation, and it is the criticism. The Simple X community voucher tokens planned for 2026. Why community vouchers? To cover the server bills securely and privately with free centralized platforms. You can run Simple X yourself too. This could help do it. Why build on Ethereum blockchain? Why not exist in crypto? Existing cryptocurrencies do not have the implementation of the required model for community vouchers. The price of cryptocurrencies is determined speculatively and not based on cost. The fact that they can be freely traded and transferred, exposing existing cryptocurrencies and tokens financial regulations. This is also true. As much as I like Monero, it is a speculative market. It is based on a freer and more sovereign market than cash. But you have to remember that if Monero's price goes significantly down, gets deregulated, gets delisted, then SimpleX is stuck and the node runners are stuck in the dust. If they're stuck in the dust, then they have to find a different way to do some form of funding. This isn't a crazy stance. This is like the problem with the communities that rely on the public infrastructure of these servers to run. It is not like Odyssey or what you would call Kick that could implement a payment system like this because they get most of their money from ads and premium memberships, which kind of defeat the purpose, and Rumble, etc., the other platforms, where they can take that ad revenue and continue to grow their infrastructure costs, etc., where then they could have implemented a option to pay you up people out Monero, take Monero as a donation like button, like XMR chat, take a cut of it, whatever, however they want to do their model. But you have, because they also pick coins and have a speculative market, etc. So they're not really exposed to this. SimpleX is trying to do it where they're not going to get heavily nailed by financial regulation. Even cash is regulated. They make a point about that, which I agree. Cash is regulated. If I'm a company and I accept $1 million in cash, and I'm in a country that's like, hey, we're gonna look through your financial audit. You said you took $1 million in cash, but you're only reporting $500,000, whatever it may be. That could potentially cause legal headaches, which you don't want to do. It's not the way that the people want the world to work, but it's just how the world works. So please to be patient. Try to understand. It's not the choice. It's so they're not choosing the Ethereum network. They don't plan to token emissions or any public or private pre-sale. I might do a video on this. This is not an investment offer. All details are subject to legal review. So I'll probably do a video on this when I learn more about it and their reasoning, I guess. But I just want people to touch grass a little bit. Okay. But, just have an open mind. And think about, where can Monero's utility be the most value? Not everything. Monero doesn't have to be everywhere accepted everywhere in the world. That'd be ludicrous. That would be forcing your guys' opinions on other people's and your perspective on other people's, which isn't really a free society that I want to live in. At the end of the day, Monero is about choice and freedom, just like anything else. Just like Linux. Linux is about choice and freedom. And we might not like other decisions that companies make, but you can. This is where voting with your dollars works. You don't have to agree with SimpleX's decision, just like Odyssey's decision or Rumble's or Kix, to reject the idea of Monero. But that's just something to think about. You can just not use their service. Like I don't have the blue check mark with Twitter because I think it's kind of fucking retarded. But I also don't have it because they don't accept Monero. So I'm not going to hand them my credit card information or my debit information or any other information that I don't need to hand it. And because they don't accept Monero, I will not get the blue check. I would probably get it if they did accept Monero, but it would push me further to get the blue check mark if they did accept Monero. Food for thought, though. But we back. That was just my perspective rant. 5.4, Ring Signature Introduction. A transaction will contain a reference to other transactions' outputs, telling observers which old outputs to be spent in its own outputs. The context of an output includes one-time address, assigning ownership of the output, and the output commitment hiding the amount, also encoding the output amount from section 5.3. While a transaction's verifiers don't know how much money is contained in each input and output, they still need to be sure the sum of input outputs equal to the sum of output amounts. Monero uses a technique called ring signature, first implemented in January of 2017, v4 of the protocol, to accomplish this. As with one-time address K, 0 from section 4.2, the output index T is appended to the shared secret before hashing. This ensures the outputs directed to the same address do not have similar mask and amounts except with the negligible probability. Also, like before, the term RKVB is multiplied by 8, so it's really 8 RKVB. The solution implemented in version 10 of the protocol replaced the previous method mentioned that used more data, thereby causing the transaction type to change from v3 RCTTT bulletproof to v4 RCTT type bulletproof 2. The first edition of this report discussed the previous method. Chapter 5, Monero amount hiding. If we have a transaction with M inputs containing amount A1 AM and P outputs with the amount B0 BP1, then the observer would be justifiably expect that is that delta? EI AJ equals ET BT equals 0. Since commitments are additive and we don't know X, we could easily prove our inputs equal to the outputs to observers by making the sum commitments to inputs and outputs amounts equal 0, i.e. by setting the sum of the output blinding factors equal to the sum of old input blinding factors. To avoid sender identifiability, we use a slightly different approach. The amounts being spent correspond to the outputs of previous transactions which had commitments. CAJ equals XJG plus AJH. The sender can create a new commitment to the same amounts but using different blinding factors. That is, CAJ equals XJG plus A38 AJH. Clearly, she would know the private key of the private keys of the difference between the two commitments. CAJ plus C apostrophe J AJ equals RJ equals R apostrophe JG. Hence, she would be able to use this value as a commitment to 0, since she can make a signature with the private key. RJ apostrophe J equals ZJ, and prove that there is no H component to the sum, assuming Y is the unknown. In other words, proving that CAJ and C apostrophe AJ equals ZJG plus 0H, which we'll actually do in chapter 6, where we discuss the structure of ring signature transactions. What is called C apostrophe AJ a pseudo output commitment? Pseudo output commitments are included in the transaction data, and there is one for each input. Before committing a transaction into the blockchain, the network will want to verify is the amount balance. Blinding factors for pseudo and output commitments are selected as such. There's some math. This allows us to prove the inputs and outputs equal to the output amounts. Here's some more math. Fortunately, choosing such blinding factors is easy. In the current version of Monero, all blinding factors, blinding, if the intended total output amount doesn't precisely equal to any combination of owned outputs, then the transaction authors can add a change output, sending extra money back to themselves. By analogy to cash, with a $20 bill and a $15 expense, you will receive $5 back from the cashier. Recall from section 231, we can subtract a point by inverting its coordinates, then adding it. If P equals RY, dash P equals RY, recall also that negations of field elements are calculated mod Q, so R mod Q. Factors are random except for the mth pseudo output commitment, where X apostrophe M is simply some math. So let's look at this real quick. Ring signature introduces an improved version of ring signatures called a multi-layer linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature, which allows for hidden amounts, origins, and destinations of transactions with reasonable efficiency and verifiability, trustless coin generation. Interesting. The basics. Ring CT, short for Ring Confidential Transactions, is how transaction amounts are hidden in Monero. Ring CT was implemented in block 1220516 in January of 2017. After September 17, this feature became mandatory for all transactions on the network. Ring CT introduces an improved version of ring signatures called a multi-layer linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature, which allows for hidden amount, origins, and destinations of transactions with reasonable efficiency and verifiable trustless coin generation. Oh, short paper. Ring signatures, confidential transactions from Monero. Abstract. The article introduces a method of hiding transaction amounts in the strongly decentralized anonymous cryptocurrency Monero. Similar to Bitcoin, Monero is a cryptocurrency which is distributed through a proof-of-work mining process. The original Monero protocol was based on CryptoNote, which uses ring signatures and one-time keys to hide the destination and the origin of transactions. Recently, the technique of using a commitment scheme to hide the amount of transactions has been discussed and implemented by Bitcoin Core developers Gregory Maxwell. In this article, a new type of ring signature, a multi-layered linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature is described, which allows for hidden amounts, origins, and destinations of transactions with reasonable efficiency and verifiability, trustless coin generation. The author would like to know that in early drafts of this were publicized in the Monero community and on Bitcoin Research IRC channel. Blockchain hash drafts are available for Insight Snow. I have expanded several sections, fixed multiple typos, including some demo code. No changes to underlying research has been made. So that is something to keep in mind of what it does. Range proofs. One problem with additive commitments is that if we have commitments CA1, CA2, CB1, and CB2, we intended to use them and to prove that A1 plus A2 minus B1 plus B2 equals 0. Then those commitments would still apply if value 1 equals, in the equation were negative. For instance, we could have A1 equals 6, A2 equal 5, B2 1 equal 21, and B2 equal negative 10. 6 plus 5 minus 21 plus minus 10 equals 0, where 21G, 10G, 21G, L, 10G, 1L plus 11G plus 11G, lots of words, and math, since 10L, 10, we have effectively created L more monero over 7.2x 1074 than we put in. The solution addressing this issue in Monero is to prove that each output amount is a certain range, from 0 to 2 to the power of 64 minus 1. Using the bulletproofs providing scheme first described by Benedict Bunz et al. In 43, also explained in 138 and 50, given the involvement and intricate nature of bulletproofs is not elucidated in this document. Moreover, we feel that the cited materials adequately presents its concepts. The bulletproof providing algorithm takes an output amounts BT and commitment mask YT and outputs all the CBT and an n-tuple aggregated proof HBP, ASTT, TXULR-ABT. That single proof is used to prove all output amounts are in range at the same time, as aggregating them greatly reduces space requirements, although it does increase the time to verify. This verification algorithm takes in as input all CBT and 2 BP, and the output's true if all commitment amounts are in the range of 0 to the 2 power of 64 minus 1. The n-tuple BP occupies 32 bytes of storage. It's conceivable that with several outputs in legitimate range, the sum of their amounts could roll over and cause a similar problem. However, when the maximum output is much smaller than I take it as a huge number of outputs for that to happen. For example, if the range is 0 to 5 and 1 to 99, then it is to counterfeit money using an input of 2, we would need 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1 equals 101 equals 2 mod 99. And for 21 to ultra outputs in Monero, L is about 189 times bigger than the available range, which means a ridiculously 2 power of 189 outputs to counterfeit money. Prior to protocol, V8 range proofs were accomplished with Borroman ring signatures, which were explained in the first edition of Zero to Monero. Vectors L and R contain log 64p elements each, means that the log function is rounded up. Due to their construction, some bulletproofs use dummy outputs as padding to ensure that p plus the number of dummy outputs is the power of 2. Those dummy outputs can be generated during the verification and are not stored within the proof of data. The variables in a bulletproof are unrelated to other variables in this document. Symbol overlap is merely coincidental. Note that group elements ASTTL and R are multiplied by 1/8 before being stored, and then multiplied it by 8 during verification. This ensures that all members of the one subgroup recall section 231. It turns out that multiple separate bulletproofs can be botched together, which means they are verified simultaneously. Doing so improves how long it takes to verify them, and currently in Monero, bulletproofs are batched on a per block basis. Although there is no theoretical limit how many can be batched together, each transaction is only allowed to have one bulletproof. I'm assuming that is important. Chapter 6, Monero Ring Confidential Transactions, RCT. All right. Reading more Monero drama. I love it. It's super funny. All right, Monero Ring Confidential Transactions, CT. Throughout Chapter 4 and 5, we built up several aspects of Monero transactions. At this point, a single one input, one output transaction from some unknown author to some unknown recipient sounds like, my transaction uses transaction public key RG. I will spend old output X, note that it has a hidden amount, AX commitment to CX. I will give it a pseudo output commitment, CX. I will make one output Y, which may be spent by the other time address. It has a hidden amount, any commitment to in CY encrypted for the recipient, and proven in range with a bulletproof style range proof. Please note that C apostrophe X minus CY equals 0. Some questions remain. Did the author actually own X? Does the pseudo output commitment C actually correspond to CX, such as AX equals A apostrophe X and AY? Has someone tampered with the transaction and perhaps directed the output recipient unintended by the original author? As addition mentioned in section 4.2, we can prove ownership of an output by signing the message with its one-time address. Whoever has the address key owns the output. We can also prove that it has the same amount as the pseudo output commitment by proving knowledge of the commitment to zero's private key. CX C minus C apostrophe X equals ZXG. Moreover, if the message is all the transaction data except the signature itself, then verifiers can be assured that everything is as authored intended. The signature only works with the original message. mslag signature allows us to do all this while also obscuring the actual spent output amongst other outputs from the blockchain, so observers can't be sure which one is being sent. Truly a great form of technology, to be completely honest. Very cool correspondence, and I'm glad to be a part of it and learning kind of how it works. We're just going to do a Monero stands out from other cryptocurrencies. It's an ability to hide the signer, conceal the transaction amount, and protect the identity of the recipient. Part 1, 4, 5, 6, 7 helps build the foundation of understanding the appropriate security properties ring signatures about in the RO model. This part introduces mslag, as well as part 8 and 9 will focus on Monero's privacy, and so far, the signer's identity and the transaction amount are concealed. Part 10 will introduce stealth addresses, a mechanism to protect identity of the fund's recipients. We'll figure it out. I want a deeper understanding. Okay, Chapter 6, Monero Ring Confidentiality. Transactions, Ring CT. Monero is a cryptocurrency under steady development. Transaction structure, protocols, and cryptographic schemes are always prone to evolving as new innovations, objectives, and threats are found. In this report, we have focused our attention to ring confidentiality transactions, aka ring CT, as they implemented in the current version of Monero. Ring CT is mandatory for all new Monero transactions, so we will not describe any depreciated transaction schemes, even if they are still partially supported. The transaction type we have discussed so far will be further elaborated in this chapter. Ring CTT type Ring CT type bulletproof 2. We present a conceptual summary of the transaction 6.3. Ring confidential transaction types RCT type bulletproof 2, currently protocol version 12. All new transactions must use this transaction type in which input is signed separately. An actual example of Ring CT type bulletproof 2 transaction with all this computes can be inspected in Appendix A. Amount commitments and transaction fees. Assume transaction sender has previously received various outputs with the amounts A1 AM addressed a one-time address to address K0 pi 1 K0 pi M, and with the amount commitments CA pi 1 CA pi M. The sender knows the private keys corresponding to the one-time addresses. Section 4.2. The sender also knows the blinding factors used in commitments. Typically, transaction outputs are lower in total than the transaction input. In order to provide a fee that will incentivize miners to include the transaction in the blockchain, transaction fee amounts are stored in clear text in the transaction data transmitted to the network. Miners can create an additional output for themselves with a fee. Did not know that. Ring CT was the first implemented in January 2017, V4 of the protocol. It was made mandatory for all new transactions on September 2017, V6 of the protocol. Ring CT version 2 of Monero's transaction protocol. Within the Ring CT era, there are three depreciated transaction types. Ring CT type full, Ring CT type simple, and Ring CT type bulletproof. The former two coexisted within the first iteration of Ring CT and are explored in the first edition of this report. Then, with the advent of bulletproofs, protocol version 8, Ring signature T-type full was depreciated, and Ring CT type simple was upgraded. Ring CT type bulletproof, Ring C type bulletproof 2 arrived due to a minor improvement in encrypting the output commitments masked and amount, version 10. In Monero, there is a minimum base fee that scales with transaction weight and semi-mandatory because while you can create new blocks containing tiny fee transaction, most Monero nodes won't rely on such transactions to other nodes. This results in few, if any, miners will try to include them in the blocks. Transaction authors can provide miner fees above the minimum if they want. We can go to more detail in the section. We go more into detail in section 734. Oh, wow. All right, beautiful guys. We're going to ring more on the ring signatures tomorrow. Kind of a late start, but that's okay. I'm going to see you guys in the next video explaining more about Monero's ring signatures, one of the strongest strengths that it has for privacy and security.